Bum 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 a boom boom ba ba dum bum bum a boom boom ba bum bum ba bum bum.
Record your name followed by the pound key.
Aber Paltiel.
Thank you. You are now in participant number 1.
Okay.
Well, he's taking mine, so...
Yeah, there's a Fabringan tonight. The Fabringan tonight at Yosef Chaim Kurtz's home for Yud Aleph Shvat, Yud Shvat, and the address is 888 Montgomery, and the apartment is D11. That's the fourth floor on the right as you walk into the building.
What time?
7:30.
What's the address tonight?
888 Montgomery.
D11.
888 Montgomery.
D11.
You're able to get a babysitter?
I don't think so. We're gonna. Let's see what I can do. Okay, recording.
Okay. All right, so we are on the next challenge, so to speak, just above the middle of page Ches. The line starts with Gam Bechinas Asfiras Diak.
Again. Ready?
Ready?
I might call you back tonight. Yeah.
So, never introduced we're talking about you're trying to identify, understand what is the principle of making Chadoshim. And briefly we discussed and say that it's not a superficial thing. And the principle, to understand that, first we have to understand that there are two distinct principles of spheres. That's called spheres the Ma and spheres the Bam. What is spheres the Bam? So this is where we're going on to explain. I went through various madrigas, and the principal point is that Ein Sof in essence, before I mentioned that we have to understand that everything, as we discussed in the other last week, everything has to come from Ein Sof. But in essence, Ein Sof is totally removed from the whole union of spheres. And then we go through the various madrigas of spheres and pointing out how Ein Sof does not have those qualities, those things that qualify these spheres as spheres and distinguishing them from other things, from other spheres. We went through spheres Bichlal, and then spheres the Atzilus, and then spheres Alamayim Atzilus, and then even now we're up to the union from spheres the Ak. So we discussed there the various aspects that were brought in, that in every instance where we have spheres so far, we have a certain gather, a certain qualifier. And qualifiers do not exist in Atzmos, in Ein Sof B'Yatzim. Now we're going further. V'gam bechinas hasfiras diak. Even the bechina of spheres diak, and we already went into this briefly. And what is so special about spheres diak? This is what we discussed last week. That Ak is called Odom Kadmoin. Odom means that there are spheres. That's what Odom is, structure of spheres. But it is Odom Kadmoin. And what is Kadmoin infer? Kadmoin means that it is original, meaning it is not something that came into being. It represents the way things are in the original reality itself. This means Kadmon. We discussed last week in general this principle. So here we have a union of Odom Kadmin. That the whole principle, the whole term Odom Kadmin is like a self-contradicting term, because Odom is Ayin from Chiddush, of system, as a structure, and Kadmin is not Chiddush. And what is the meaning of Odom Kadmin? Therefore, how do these two things come together? That it is in fact Odom. But this is what's called the first Gilui from Ein Sof. And therefore, what is Nizgala is the spheres, the way they are in their origin, in their original state. That's Kadmon.
I'm sorry, Adam is the first Gilui from himself?
Odom Kadmon. Odom Kadmon is the first Gilui from himself.
This that the Etzem is Pashtus, how do we say that it comes out as if it's in its original state? If the original state of Etzem is Pashtus?
Let me just finish presenting it, and everything will fall into place. Spheres, as we perceive them, say Odom. Odom, if you take a human being must have what's called koiches. Otherwise, he cannot fulfill his function as an Odom, as a human being. Because what is the function of a human being? Action. In order to act, you have to define what you're going to do. You have to have the impetus and the inspiration to do the action, and so forth. Everything that is part of the structure, the human structure, is a necessity for the human being to be what he is. Because the human being is a composite, and only by a complementary composite can he fulfill his duties as a human being. That's made order. So therefore, every koyach that a person has a distinct identity and distinct function. Everything contributes to the total presence, what's called a human being. Now, the spheres, forget of the spheres, the way things are in origin, in Ein Sof is not a composite. Ein Sof does not have elements that complement it, that it should be Ein Sof.
I'm not sure what that means. Complementation.
Okay, so we'll do this now. Once and for all, we have to. We did it many times in the past. I just want to point out. We mentioned many times. Infinity of space is an impossibility. You can't have infinite composed of many finites. If space, by definition, is a measurable entity, you can measure it in yards, you can measure it in light years. Makes no difference how you measure it. It cannot be infinite.
Why? Why not?
Shmuel. So, therefore, if we say that this is Ein Sof, means that it is not composed of units. That's what Ein Sof means. It's not composed of units. It is a fundamental reality in and of itself. And its infinity quality is from itself. Otherwise, if anything can contribute to it, it's not already Ein Sof. And we say that this Ein Sof is the origin of everything that eventually came to be, and infinitely more. This which came to be is a very limited exposition of what Ein Sof can produce. Like you say, there is 10 spheres, and it says in the Kabbalah, 10 spheres was already a definitive decision. It should be 10 spheres. It could have been infinite amount of spheres, because Ein Sof is not limited. Infinite number of spheres. Later on, we come to an expression in this Maimer and in this Hemshech that Atzmus yesh bei hakoil. And the meaning of yesh bei hakoil is not everything that we can identify. Hakoil means in infinity itself, everything. So now, the Atzmus has Ein Sof has everything, and it has everything, as I said, not as a composite. None of these things that Atzmus, that Ein Sof has, contributes to its being infinite. That means that this is all emanating. This is all. If everything exists there because of its infinity, not because of its presence. Odom Kadmon. Okay, so one more time. That is the Kadmon state of everything. The Kadmon state, the pristine state of everything.
Is what? Is this?
This the way it is in Ein Sof. There is no hischachus over there. It is all present because it's Ein Sof. Odom Kadmon is a phenomenal thing, and it really is quite a challenging thing to even to express, to understand. Is that's too much to ask. That we have Odom, which means there is an orderly structure. That's Odom. And this orderly structure consists of 10 spheres. And these 10 spheres are there not in order to help it to be structured. These 10 spheres are emanations from Kadmon, from the way the spheres are in Kadmon. where the spheres are not contributing to anything. This is what Adam Kadmon discussed many times. Again, we can express it, and understanding is a different thing. But to understand, even to understand at the level that we can understand, is also significant. Adam Kadmon is the first result, the first emanation after the Tzimtzum. And we discussed many times what is the effect of the Tzimtzum.
I was thinking the Kav is the first emanation.
The Kav comes from Adam Kadmon.
So you have
The Hamshach of the Kav is Adam Kadmon.
So you just said Adam Kadmon is a result, first result after the Tzimtzum, and then you defined a few minutes ago Kadmon as something.
I'm guilty.
Guilty as charged.
You define
You
Kadmon.
have to try and understand the way I'm saying it. I'm going to be contradicting myself many times. And that's the whole challenge, to understand how things really come together in the process of Gilui of Ein Sof.
But Gilui of Ein Sof is a creation.
Kadmon is not a creation. It becomes a creation later. You have to try to understand it. I can't help you that. I can only tell you what you need to understand. Then you have to try and learn to understand. Huh?
You could be really of Kadmon after Tzimtzum and still hear Kadmon?
That's right. That's right. This is what we learned in this Hemshech. Yes, sir.
Adam Kadmon is the first emanation after the Tzimtzum. Before, you say the Kav comes from Adam Kadmon.
Right. The Adam Kadmon is the tip of the Kav, the upper tip of the Kav.
Beginning of the Kav.
Right.
Rishis HaKav.
Right. All right. Let me present it in a mimic, at least in a structured way, so we'll know what we do. We know what we don't understand. At least right now, we're just catching words here and there. After the Tzimtzum, we already learned there remained the Rishima. The Rishima is just Metzias and that's devoid of any oil. Devoid of any oil. The Rishima is the Rishima of everything that is contained in the Ein Sof, in the oil Ein Sof, but without the oil. Just the Metzias. Therefore, there is no spheres over there, it's just Metzias. And then there was, as we learned, there is what's called Chozer V'Heir. Chozer V'Heir means that then the oil that preceded the Tzimtzum is brought back to affect the Rishim and to illuminate the Rishim. So what's the point of that? You took off the oil and went the Rishim. Rishim, I don't want to confuse her. Rishim is that ultimately that which is ultimately becomes part of world. But you created the Rishim, but then you say no. But I don't want the world to come directly from the Rishim. I want the world to come from the oil that illuminates the Rishim, which is the same oil that you have removed before. So what's the point? What has been accomplished by the Tzimtzum? You're kind of eliminating the whole effect of the Tzimtzum. So we explain that this is the great effect of the Tzimtzum and the profound difference that the Tzimtzum affects. Before the Tzimtzum, there was Ein Sof. After the Tzimtzum, there was Ein Sof. The difference is that before the Tzimtzum, the Ein Sof is present in its pristine state. But there isn't a sense of this coming from someplace. After the Tzimtzum, there is Hamshachas of Ein Sof, because there's a Tzimtzum. Now, there is a cognizance, that there is an oil coming, even though the oil that's coming is Ein Sof. but it goes through what's called as we said about through a conduit, through the shima. The Ayin Sof comes through a narrow passage. That's what the effect of the tzimtzum is. As a result of this coming through a narrow passage, it is possible to relate to the Ayin Sof and to the content of the Ayin Sof, because it is not. It becomes through a process of expression rather than a presence itself. Like we say, the difference between a lake or a river and water drawn out of the river. It's the same water, and you can draw all the water indefinitely. But that is the difference. Whether the water is there in its original pristine state, or the pristine water is taken through a conduit. So now, what does it mean? It's pristine sphere, it's pristine. It's the way it is in the origin, and yet it goes through a tzimtzum. What's the difference between that and that which follows later in Seder Hishtalshos, where you say this is not kadmon? Everything comes from the same source. How is this more kadmon than that? What's the difference? So the subtle difference and important difference is that in the oil of Odom Kadmon, there is definitely the recognition that this is an oil that is not coming functionally, but it's coming because it's there in truth. After that, in Seder Hishtalshos, there is a functional element in the oil. The reason there is this oil is because it supplies some service. When there is kalim, for sure, that would be the Natzilus, even higher than Natzilus. There's a functional element, like we originally discussed, on the lowest level, the human being, that every koyach by him has a functional presence, and we could say it's present because it's functional, because of functionality. And like we always mentioned, when you see how the world sees the human being, then you can understand what this is all about, because they say no, the human being wasn't intended originally to have 2 hands and 2 feet. He developed 2 hands because he needed 2 hands. There isn't a real any real truth in it. So we reject this completely, but the point is that it is so functional that it can be interpreted that way. And you need a real insight to understand what the human being is, to understand, no, that all these functional koiches are really rooted in the essence of the human being. In the neshama, there is, like we discussed last week, that everything is rooted in the nefesh order. It's not just a functional element. All right. So this is Pshat Odom Kadmon, that it is like a Odom, and the whole principle of Odom is a mechudesh. A structure of any kind is mechudesh. But at that stage, Odom Kadmon, because this is in direct connection, it's a choize v'heir, it gets its oil directly from the oil in soif. Therefore, in Odom Kadmon, there is clearly the sense and the recognition that this oil is an original oil. It's not there because of functionality, it's there because it's a truth. And therefore, the spheroids that are contained in Odom Kadmon, so he says, Hagam she'enu b'hagdora klal, although they're totally outside of the info hagdora. Ein b'hagdora klal. Here, we are challenged to understand what's meant Sphira is Betada Hagdora. But once we understand the principle of Kadma, so we know that the spheres are not there because of the functionality of this sphere, because of its gather, the gather of that sphere and gather of that sphere. They are there because they represent Ein Sof. Therefore, the spheres are not the Hagdora.
Even
Each.
Even in Ak, they don't exist, like you said in Ein Sof, in the spheres, they don't exist any complementary in terms of saying completing the shlemus of Atzmos.
No.
And Ak, it's the same thing.
Not the same thing. It represents the oil, the way it is cut. Which means, it says, here is the oil. Why is there this oil? Because it exists in Ein Sof. Therefore, there is no Hagdora element in this at all. When do you need a Hagdora? In concept, in simple term. You need a Hagdora when you need to supply a certain service. How is this applied? How is this applied? But something that is there not because of its functionality, because of what it contributes, but it's there because because of the initial truth of everything. Everything is contained. So there is no Hagdora.
There's no what?
Hagdora. No defining element.
What then is the distinguishing feature?
Okay, you have a kasha. Sit down, will you?
No, I'm gonna plug in my phone and get going. I want to.
Okay,
Sit down, please.
Okay. V'gam. Okay, let's go now inside. V'gam b'chinas asfiras ziyah, and thus even the bechina of the spheres of Ak. And here it's clear why we use the word bechina asfiras ziyah, because we're not talking about a definitive entity. But we call it, but nevertheless there is spheres in it. And how do we know there's spheres? Because we can test for them, so to speak. The bechinas asfiras ziyag hagam she'einam behagdora klal. Although that they are not in the behagdora, they do not have an element of hagdora at all. And then parenthetically, the Rebbe explains that when we say einam behagdora, we mean gam loy bibchinas hagdora mufshetes. Not even in the aspect of hagdora mufshetes. We said before that just a moment ago that asfiras ziyah we say bechinas asfiras ziyah, and we discussed many times in the past that the term bechina allows us to speak about concepts not because we identify the concepts and we can recognize their presence, so to speak. We can see them, we can touch them, we can define them and identify them relative to others. Bechina means like this, the word bechina means testing. In our day, we have we have a very clear expose of what that means. When you take blood and they want to test the blood for sugar, you look at the blood, you don't see any sugar. You see plain blood. But under a certain state of a test, a certain qualities surface. Not because they exist there individually, so to speak. They're all part of the same blood, and they don't identify. So you can't by looking at it, you can't tell this blood has an excess of sugar and this blood doesn't have an excess of sugar. But under certain conditions, that surfaces. It's been testing, which means this blood as a whole blood for the test has that sugar. But its presence of sugar is in a state that's a bechinas. It can only be seen under a certain condition, and even then it's not seeing. It tests for it. It acts. It reacts in a certain way. If it has a certain amount of a certain condition, it reacts in a certain way. Not that you can actually separate it, filter it out. Anything that you can filter out is not a bechina, it's a presence. Bechina means that it doesn't exist as a definitive presence, but it has that effect. So this is what we said Bechin Asfiras Diyak. And we explained why Sfiras Diyak, Eino Behagdora, is only Bechinas. Because the Sfiras Diyak do not exist because of their functionality as Sfiras. They exist because of the Ein Sof element. Therefore they're not Behagdora. And then he says, this Gam Loi Bechinas Hagdora Mufshetis means that this which we just now finished saying, that the Sfiras Diyak are in the form of Bechina, is not really true. We can't really test for them. Not even Hagdora Mufshetis.
You cannot test for...
You cannot test for the Sfiras.
Their presence is not apparent and it cannot be tested for.
It cannot be. We call it Bechina because of a lack of a better way of expressing it. There is something there, right? We're saying there is something. No, you can't even test for it. In line Bechina Hador Mufshetas. Not even a Hagdora Mufshet, Hagdora that is not an individualized Hagdora. A Hagdora that is, so to speak, part of the reality itself, merges with the reality. Even that you cannot refer to it. In other words, even under a test, not Microsoft. Microsoft is definitely identifies individual elements, but a test is something else. A test is testing for a reaction. There is no real presence.
Test tells me things that are composed.
Huh?
Test tells me things that are composed of it. So this is composed of.
Well, composition is the same thing as saying you'd see things under a microscope. Composition is no. Tum v'tahara, right? The Rambam explains that tum v'tahara, that dover tome touched food, that's the basic tum, becomes tum. What's in it? Is it composed of the tum? It's not composed of the tum. And how do we test for this tumor, Bechinas tumor? How do we test for it? The only way to test for it is to find out what happened to this piece of meat before it got here. Was it exposed to tumor? Was it exposed to tumor?
The meat itself doesn't tell you anything.
Doesn't tell anything. There is no component in it of tumor. And yet, it's a definite reality. And depending on what it is, it's a very serious consequences. So that's a life of Bechinas Hagdor, Gam Loi Bechinas Hagdor Mufshetas. So here we have, please, we have to use what's called seichel. Yesterday we spoke a lot about this in inside the nefesh we have seichel, we have pure seichel, which means we can recognize from things from a reality perspective rather than from a created perspective, from an experiential perspective. Here we have a situation It's Bechina spheres. The whole sphere is only because it's Bechina. And then we say, no, like Bechina is Hagdor Mufshetis. Doesn't have even a pristine type of Hagdor. Because we're talking about spheres that are there mitzad Ein Sof. In Ein Sof there is nothing. Kol Mokoim. The Kol Mokoim. Yet still, even at that, even the spheres in that state of reality, Harei Hein Bibchinas Mitzius Dover Ma. They cannot be identified in contrast to something else. That's called Hagdorah. But there is nevertheless a Bechinas of Mitzius, a Bechina of Mitzius Dover Ma, of some kind of a presence. Not a presence that can identify itself, that can separate itself from other presences. But there is a presence. Mitzius Dover Ma. וכמשכוסוב מזה בדרוש אם תפשל ראש השונה רי סמך וו. This Indian is discussed in the Hemshech Yom Tov Shel Rosh Hashanah Samach Vav. The Chol Zeh Eino Yishayach Bein Sod Klal. All of these various madrigas, even the final madriga of Esesphiras, Bechinas Esesphiras the Ak, which doesn't have any Agdor, not even Agdor Mepshetes. Nevertheless, there is a Mitzius Dover. There is something that we say there is something to it. Let's finish this next couple of lines, and maybe we'll be able to discuss it a little bit. Ein Shai Bein Sof Klal. It's not Shai to Ein Sof. The question that we need to, which should arise in our minds right away. If it's not Shai to Ein Sof, we're saying that this is as a sphere as Adam Kadmon. So it is Kadmon. So how do you say in a Shai Bein Sof Klal? So he explains. Mash in his harbor as a spheres, the fact that as a spheres came to be, Zehorag Bibchinas, his galus ha'oir shaloi. That is only where the Esespheres come to be in the his galus ha'oir shaloi. The his galus of his oir. So we have to translate each one of these words. His galus ha'oir shaloi lei b'bchinas ha'atzmus. Not in the bechina of the atzmus. What would be missing if you took out the word his galus and we say rak b'bchinas ha'oir shaloi? What is his galus ha'oir? I qualify.
The Or itself.
Huh?
That the Or itself is being revealed. Meaning to say that prior to this revelation, you could also say it's non-existent within the Etzem.
Right. Is galus ha'oir upon the oil we spoke many times, and we are coming again to the core element of this. Can I have the water, please? Thank you. We explained many times, and you probably lose it every time we measure, we come to it. What's oir? We discuss it at least twice a week. And it's not too much.
Not enough.
What makes it difficult for us to relate to the word oir correctly right away, even after so many discussions, is that we have oir Hashemesh, at the lowest level, where the oir literally is just a functional oir, not really an essential oir. Functional oir means it makes you see the object. Doesn't give you an element of oir. Like we point out many times, that the sun is a ball of fire, and the oil emanates from this ball of fire. That is not what we refer to when we say oil Hashemesh. Oil Hashemesh, and the Chassidus refers to when it gives a mashal for oil Hashemesh, is an essential oil, because the expression in Chassidus Hashemesh is etzem behiri. Etzem behiri. Fire is not etzem behiri. Fire is fire. Etzem behiri means it is light through and through, not like fire that has a wick. That the wick is not fire. And what means do we have to recognize this element in the sun? This is very important. There's a saying, there's a cloud, that Eibusha created the world, a physical world, and godliness and ruchnish is completely concealed. It's completely concealed, but there are cracks all over the place. And if you look through the cracks, you see a completely different world. The sun is a ball of fire. And this is how it produces heat and then light. But then, if it were exclusively that, then how come we do not notice the fuel of the sun being reduced? How can you have a fire from a fuel without the fuel going down? Like Moshe Rabbeinu by the sneh. You see the sneh burning, says it's not possible. It should burn and not be consumed.
And you say it is being consumed. Very slowly.
Shmuel.
And eventually it will burn out.
Shmuel, go there, please.
What?
Let us learn.
I'm asking a question.
I'm answering you. The way that Eibusha presented to us, there is no notice of the consumption of fuel. In order that we should be able to recognize that there is something else to it. Sure, everything is camouflage, everything is concealed. But there are cracks. If you want to look through the cracks, you'll see it. If you don't want to look through the cracks, you won't see it. It says in the Chumash that Eibusha created light the first day. There's no sun. What's that light about? What's that light about?
But you're not talking about that light.
We are talking about that light. That's what I'm saying to you. We are talking about that light. That light was later on concealed in the sun. So that it should not be a light that completely negates the whole meaning of the hell of the world, like it was in the first day. I'm not going to debate you on this at all. Because this is, we are trying to understand what Torah tells about Chassidus. Although there's plenty to debate, I'm not interested in that. Not interested in that. I'm interested in the world that the Rebbe should present it to us.
Statement.
What?
You make a controversial statement, you have to have the...
I'm not making a controversial statement at all. The statement is straight from the Torah. It's not controversial.
So you're making it impossible for me to ask a question.
No, you can ask a question within the Torah parameters. But you can't tell me to take me elsewhere. This which I'm saying to you, that the sun doesn't go through consumption, is said the Beis of Chassidus. And the way it is presented in Chassidus is very simple, that we see the koach in Sof that maintains the sun in its continuous state.
Well, I have a problem with faith of emunah. My emunah is weak.
Okay, so strengthen your emunah. Don't try to get us away from emunah. You strengthen your emunah. I think that would be a better path.
To do that, I need facts.
No, these are the facts. Chassidus explains to you how you find the emunah. Emunah is not facts. Emunah is in the neshama element. Okay. So as I was saying, what is oil? Oil it's like the oil in Yom Rishon. And the union of oil is, the whole principle of oil is to reveal in the world the fact that, what's the difference whether you see object in light or you feel object by touch in the darkness? In the darkness, the object exists only by virtue of the fact that it affects you. It doesn't have a fundamental element of truth. In light, you see, we say all the time, you see an object without coming in contact with it. That means that you're relating to the truth of the object. It's there because it has to be there, because there's a godly truth to it. This is the principle of light, of oil. So oil Hashemesh, the oil Hashemesh, this is, we pointed out, this is part and parcel of the Shemesh. In other words, it transforms the whole materials of the world. Not that it makes us able to see objects. It changes the whole situation. It's not a state of darkness, it's a state of light. Okay, so now to remind us of what. So we have oil. Then we have his galus oil. Oil inside, oil, and then his galus. The oil itself, the way it is, the oil that is, okay, step back a moment. What in fact, in that case, since we're saying that the oil is not something which is produced by consumption of fuel, what is this oil? How come the sun has oil? So we said many times, because that the sun is atzmi, etzem mihiri. And what is the principle of an etzem? Etzem means something is true in and of itself, not because of some ingredients that it contains. An etzem. We'll make it clearer when we go to the next stage. So therefore, the oil, an etzem, wherever the etzem is, the entire environment within sight and between reach of the etzem acquires the effect of the presence of that etzem. Therefore, if the sun is here, then everything is reflective of the fact that the sun is here. What is it? It's light. The sunlight is not a functional light that makes us see object. It transforms the world. It makes the world also in a state of etzem, of heating. It's light. It reflects the sun, not the sunlight. That's what the etzem is. We have discussed this principle at many variations, and one most important is talking about the human being, the person. And we point out that a human being is different than all other creatures in the world. All creatures are measured by their functional value. A human being is not measured by functional value. The presence of the human being gives the world a significance. The world is relatively speaking, is a huge expanse of space and land mass and so forth. There are plenty of areas on the earth that will never trodden by human beings. And yet, it is entirely correct to say that every last inch of the world belongs to the human beings. Because there's one human being in the world, and everything in the world, every variation in the world, like climate, whatever it is, necessary in order to give support to that human being. Therefore, everything is focused on that. This is why everything has a value.
Does it have to be a you?
Has a presence. Everything has a presence because of this thing. Like the Pasuk says, "Anoichi borosi oretz, ve'odem Allah borosi." I created the earth. So what's the big thing in the earth? Oh, odem Allah borosi. I put a human being on it. I put a human being on it. Oh, that gives it a real presence. Even though the human being is so small relative to all creation. No, he's not small. He is what the whole creation is. He is the one. He gives the whole creation a presence, a real presence. Why? Because Adam is an etzem. He's a godly truth. He is not measured by functionality. He's a reality. Whatever it is, everything becomes part of that reality. Whatever it is. That's what the oil. This is the name from oil. And we explain it even on a smaller scale. But we have to go to this in order to go understand it in a smaller scale. We explain.
Paltiel?
Yes, sir.
Just to stop you for a second. So you say this is the union of fire. How does this come out of the missing disconnection of Adam becomes a presence because of his presence becomes a reality?
How is the presence of Adam affect? How is your presence affect the Antarctic? Antarctic.
How does it affect what?
The Antarctic, the other side of the world. You're not there.
Because the presence has an oil?
That's right. This is the oil of the person. Allah, Adam, Allah, Barasi, that's it. The whole world becomes.
Sorry, let me interrupt you. Pardon me. All of a sudden, your voice became very unclear, a little bit muffled. You can go back to whatever you were doing a moment ago.
Well, what happened?
And your voice is suddenly a little bit fuzzy for us on the phone. Very fuzzy.
Oh boy.
Even.
Is it better now?
Very much better now. Right. So you were saying that a person's presence on one side of the world affects the other side of the world. That's oyer.
That's right. person is present wherever he is present, and his presence is present everywhere. Just 1 second. And I gave a more, as I said, a more limited illustration of this, which hopefully we can, it's not new to us, but we can slowly we'll relate to it. You say a person owns property. What's ownership of property mean? How does a person own property? He's not holding it. Bichlal, he can't hold property. I mean, a land property. In what way is this property relate to the person? That's called the name. That they'll be learning about the name. Because of this quality of the oir of the etzem ha'odam. And we distinguish that we should understand the distinction between that and the turf area that the lion protects against other animals. It's a completely different phenomenon. Lions, animals do not have ownership of anything. The only one who has the principle of ownership is the human being. Because animals are only functional, they don't have oir. A human being is atzmi, he has oir. He has a presence way in the entire environment. And this is what we say, what a human being is. A human dwelling. A dwelling that a person owns. We always point out that this dwelling, the entire everything, the space that is encompassed in this dwelling is his dwelling. You can't come in, like you say, into a person's home and say, I'm just going to sit in your attic. You know, there's a spot in the attic I'm sure you've never seen. You have no business throwing me out of there. You're not using it. The home is for you to use. You're not using it. No. The home is not for me to use. The home is mine, for me to own, not to use. And you can be in any place, in any crack of the attic. No place, no place. You can't even climb in if you want to into my furnace. You have no business being in my home without my permission.
Today judges might not tell me like that when it comes to squatters.
Squatters. Okay,
I'm sorry. That's why this chelp by olam. That's why the world is everybody has their chelp in olam. The world is
this is something else. This is partially the union that a person is a reality, and therefore he has ownership. Wherever he is, he has an oil his sense of expense is real. In other words, like Gemara says halachically, a person is koine daladam shalodam koine shli. Haladam shalodam koine shli. And for this we have a very, so to speak, clear, home-driven driving point. Point out that a person has a home, and the Gemara says, "Odom shein lebayis ein yod." And because having a home, this is part and parcel of the reality of the person, and he's free, and because of his reality, that's why he has a home. But it's not about it. That demonstrates how the real this is, because if you were giving a human being, a person, the Empire State Building as his personal dwelling, you couldn't relate to it. It's not real. He can't relate and say, this is my dwelling. He can own it. It's a very good investment, and he can make it. But that's nothing to do with his dwelling. Why? Because in the dwelling, he has to be present in the entire dwelling in order to dwell in this dwelling. He can't be present in the Empire State Building. He can relate to it.
Even though he's in essence, there's some kind of limit to.
Because it's human essence. This is
associated with the
This
house.
is the principle want to understand. This is the principle of Ein Sof and Oir Ein Sof. Human being, his essence is limited, and therefore his Oir is limited.
Okay, now I don't understand.
Ein Sof is Ein Sof, and therefore his Oir is Ein Sof. It's just on the side.
On one hand, the person's aura extends to the entire world, but it doesn't extend to the Empire State.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
That's right. So this because the effect of the entire world, the effect on his dwelling is two different things.
You just said that's right.
I'm being attacked from all sides here. That here I said that the human being affects the entire world, the globe, and then at the other end saying, no, even in Empire State Building he can spread his wings.
Yeah, what's the answer to that?
These are two separate types of effects. The world needs a human being to be called a world. And therefore, as long as there is one human being in the world, that's what the world is all about this human being. A dwelling, he doesn't have to own this dwelling, he can own the other dwelling. That's a completely different thing. This is where he actually functions. The world belongs to the human being, as I said, Antarctic, where he was never there and never intends to be there. And there are people who are climbing Mount Everest and losing their lives, and you say, you are perfect idiots. You have no right to do this. You're supposed to live in the world, not climb Mount Everest. Why do they want to climb Mount Everest? Because it belongs to the human being. And they want to prove it practically. Yes.
When you keep saying every human being, this is not just a yid, we're talking about every.
I don't know. A yid, the yid is the center, but every human being has a certain contribution, has a certain value. He also can have a home, and can also have own property. Halachically speaking, you're not allowed to rob a goy. You can rob an animal. If you can challenge a lion, you can get him out of there, and you're not committing a crime. So, having identified oil is part and parcel of the etzem. That's important. Gilu oil, that's a very different.
Is Gilui or the dwelling of a person? Dwelling of a person is a muscle for Gilui or?
It very well could be. Gilui oil is where his oil, it's his oil, but it's functional. Very good. This is where the oil, where you have the function element of the oil, like a dwelling.
What means oil is meant for Gilui, no?
No. The oil atzma? No. Like I said, if the person, the human being, Adam Allah Barasa, the human being on the earth, he doesn't have to be there. He does not have to go and visit every part of the world.
But his oil is being gala everywhere.
It's not his gala, it's present. It's his presence. Oil brings his presence over there. It's not a gila, it's not functional only. The Haraya, he could be in the whole world, but he can't functionally be in the whole world. He can only be in a dwelling that he can relate to. And besides, even an Empire State Building is not the whole world. It's smaller than the whole world, but he can relate to it.
So it's elevating the world to his level.
Yeah.
It's not that he needs the world.
That's right. Well, That's right. Well, however, that's right. That's right. Hashem brought Adam and the world in order for Adam to transform the world, to humanize the world, to make it to claim it. That's what it says. Nasa Adam v'tzalmeinik v'seinu. What does it say after that? V'yirdu b'dgazayom v'yoshamayim. Which means they will rule the whole world. That's what the Adam was created.
So Gili is like a translation of the or into a environment.
Gili is drawing from the earth a functional element. It's still oil, but it's a Gili oil. And there is fruits. All right, so this is what we conclude today. Whatever time it took, I think it was worth it. I'm sending you from Gili oil versus oil. And it says the spheres, this is the Olam Kadmon. And the Kadmon come from the oil Kadmon. But it's from the Gili oil Kadmon, not from the Etzem oil Kadmon. In Etzem there is none of this.
Would Gili mean the Ha'ur of the oil?
Right.
Ha'ur of the, not the Etzem.
Right. In a sense, it's called Ha'ora because that's what we explained Ha'ora. Ha'ora means the functional element. Okay, this is it for this morning.
We have a Verbringen tonight at 7:30 at Yosef Chaim Pertz's home.
He said 8.
I didn't say 8.
What?
At 7:30.
Have a good day.
7:30.
7:30, 8.
7:38.
You're going to listen to Yosef Chaim, you're going to listen to me.
7:30.
You get the 7:30, help set up.
That is a real...
When do you want? It's okay with 7:30? Yeah. Okay. It's 7:30. 888 Montgomery, fourth floor. You'll be able to see Danny.
No.